Welcome back to The Hill's live coverage of the DNC of Kamala Harris's speech, which we just heard. I'm Robby Soave, host of Rising, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jessica Burbank. So let's get into it. I think Kamala Harris did a smart thing by not talking way too long. We've all been up way too late these last several nights, and the criticism of Donald Trump at the RNC was that it went on and on and on forever. So smart to be brief. And look, I will admit that while I'm not a fan of her or her policies, I think she did an effective job. In the past, where she's really struggled in terms of speaking is off the cuff answering questions. She tends to talk in these kind of vague, almost philosophical statements that have gotten mocked. This was just reading a speech from the teleprompter, which is not so difficult, but she did it well. She brought enough energy to it. It was mostly, autobiographical, which makes sense because not everyone knows who she is. They know she's the vice president, but she didn't have to run a campaign to get here. She was picked, as we've said in the last several weeks, to be the Democratic nominee. So I feel like it was a reintroduction that I can see playing well with independent and undecided voters.
Right. She opened the speech thanking her husband, Doug. It's their anniversary today. Someone said he is the epitome of wife guys. Can you imagine your wife wishing you an anniversary as she accepts the nomination for president? She then, like an AIM profile, I don't know if you had this technology, but
yes, I had an AIM profile.
Okay.
Jessica Burbank.
Did you in middle school
complete with Good Charlotte and My Chemical Romance lyrics as my away message?
Music and quotes. Okay, but we did a horrible thing.
Millennial. Go ahead.
We ranked our friends like, oh, so-and-so is my best friend, and then I will mention Natalie, and then
you don't even know what a MySpace top 8 is. We did that, but
she basically did that.
Anyway,
because she's like, thank you to my husband, thank you to Joe Biden, thank you to Jill Biden, then the delegates, and then her supporters. And so it felt like that, like a ranking in an AIM profile. But I think she did a good job telling her personal story. She talked about how her mom was going to get an arranged marriage, and then in an act of self-determination, married this guy she met at a civil rights rally. She talked about her career as a prosecutor as being inspired by her friend Wanda, who was being abused by her stepfather, which is a weird theme at the DNC this time around, people being abused by their stepfather. Two prominent stories on that, but a horrible thing inspired her to be a prosecutor. And then she said that she always charged her crimes not in the victim's name, but for the people, because all of these crimes are crimes against the people. And when one of us is hurt, we're all hurt by crimes in our society. And then she says her only client ever has been the people, and Donald Trump's only client ever has been himself, which is good writing in this speech.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all of a sudden it's popular and good to be a cop again. I thought Democrats have been running against cops and against billionaires, but then except for the ones that get on stage at the DNC, those are the good guys, Kamala Harris and J.B. Pritzker, not anyone else. But, like I said, I think it was a good speech. I mean, it was set up to be a good speech. This whole thing is a pep rally. It was very light on substance, which is not surprising to me. I was actually, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Of course, the very much boosting the Democratic ticket people on, for instance, CNN said that, I couldn't believe how much substance there was in it. No, there was not a lot of substance. It was mostly autobiographical, which makes sense because she has to explain who she is to the people watching, to the millions watching, and I think she did a good job of that. And look, I think this is a very close race. The Democrats are fired up. She's fighting for it. They are energized. She made her pitch. Obviously, she can't run on, because this is not the way people think, she can't run on like so much the successes of the administration, because the mood of the country is dissatisfaction with the administration on so many initiatives, so many policies that she was a part of, economy, immigration, et cetera. So she's not, touting the successes. She's saying, can you stomach the idea of Donald Trump being president again for 4 years? And that might end up being a successful pitch. But I wanted to ask you specifically what you thought about her statements on Israel and Gaza, which came up. There was a little bit of substance there. Obviously, some on the progressive left have been hoping or expecting her to make a little bit of a more forceful break from the administration from Biden on those policies. Biden is so unpopular with progressives in terms of the Israel issue. But what I heard was mostly the same things that he's been saying and doing. What was your take?
Yeah, I will say I did think it was substantive. She talked about not cutting Social Security and Medicare. She talked about codifying Roe. She talked about the goal of her presidency being fighting for a strong middle class, passing the bipartisan border bill. And I do think establishing who she is as a person in itself is substantive. People care about someone's personal story and their perspective. She also talked about her track record and what she got done as a prosecutor. And so did Roy Cooper before that, talked about how she had a $4 billion case with the banks, suing the big Wall Street banks for fraud.
She had a job in between being a prosecutor and now that she didn't talk about as much. But go ahead.
That turned into a $20 billion deal. So it was a substantive speech. What she said on Israel and Gaza, I think she did what mainstream media has been criticized for doing. And that is to use language that is passive when talking about Palestine, to say what has happened in Gaza, and to say the lives we've lost in Gaza. But when she talks about Israel, she talked about actions of sexual misconduct by Hamas. She talked about killing by Hamas. But when she's talking about Palestine, it's the same thing mainstream media does. The lives were lost. No, American-made weapons were sent to Israel and they were used to kill innocent women and children. And there's on-video sexual misconduct there that was not mentioned. And so while it's great, she says she believes Palestine deserves a right to self-determination. We've heard that in State Department briefings before. So it's not a diverse.
Exactly. Very much doubted that Kamala Harris would be at all different from Joe Biden on foreign policy and on that issue in particular. I think it was just hopes and vibes trying to manifest that progressive people were trying to do, that it was going to be different. So I was not at all surprised that it was exactly in line, again, with the policy she's been a part of, because she is the sitting vice president. She has co-signed, has been a part of all the policies that have been taking place for the last year. And so and how can she make that pitch to the American people when they're so dissatisfied with them? She really can't, but she can make the pitch that, look, I'm running against Donald Trump, and he is a very unpopular person, and she's making the case that I'm for America. There was a lot of patriotism tonight, a lot of rah-rah. Actually, Democrats are the party of patriotism, which, you know, make whatever you will of it. It probably, again, plays well. We're talking about thousands of voters in the swing states and winning them over to the Democratic ticket or the Republican ticket. They might have appreciated that kind of stuff. So I think overall, both conventions really were highly, highly effective spectacles for the respective candidates. And this is going to be an extremely close election that anyone could win. We were just a little disappointed, of course, that there was no special guest
Beyonce
appearance, no Taylor Swift, no.
We were told there was going to be something
there was
or
Pink
someone.
And the Dixie Chicks. Sorry,
Bush,
the Chicks.
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, George Bush. Someone thought it was going to be George Bush.
Yes, George W. Bush's office. W had to put out a statement that it was not him.
Yes.
Beyonce
all the
did.
Former
Mitt
Republicans.
Romney said
I
it's
saw
not
him.
me.
I saw his statement. Har har.
So I don't know what happened. Who was it? Who started the rumor? I'm writing in special guest for president come on November.
In some ways, Kamala Harris is herself the special guest, as she was not scheduled to be the candidate, the nominee, until very, very, very recently.
You guys aren't going to believe it. We're nominating the vice president tonight.
As much as I have criticized the decision by Democratic Party insiders, elites, and the donor class to suddenly and dramatically, push the incumbent president off the ledge and substitute Kamala Harris in terms of Democratic norms and all that, it is pretty clear so far that it's been a successful political gambit in terms of dramatically improving the Democrats' chances of retaining control of the White House. And we shall see. Now all eyes turns to whatever debates are going to take place. We know there's going to be at least the one debate between Kamala and Trump, maybe more, and a debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz that will be extremely interesting. And we will look out for those. Yeah, this was, Kamala Harris's defining moment. I think she did a good job. I think she demonstrated well that she will be different from Joe Biden because of who she is. Joe Biden is someone who was not always pro-abortion, was not always pro-gay rights. Kamala Harris always was. And well, he was
fighting
for pro-gay rights longer than Barack Obama was, interestingly enough.
But still, not as long as Kamala Harris was, and the way he supported busing and segregation policies. And what we're voting for in a president is a decision maker. And Kamala Harris has proven through her track record that she's made different decisions and will make different decisions, ones that are closer to protecting civil liberties among working people and protecting working people's interests in the economy. And so I think we can be very hopeful that Kamala Harris is going to be different than Joe Biden on all of those things, but I don't think people who care deeply about Palestine and Palestinian freedom are convinced that she is going to change course there.
Yeah, I think they are right to be unconvinced. I would argue that I'd be unconvinced there's going to be a lot of change on all those other things, although you're right that she is certainly she's of a different generation and has at points in her career been of a different philosophy and, more progressive in many ways, although, how sincere that is and what her actual commitments are, I have a bit of a question about, but we will certainly hear more about her policies when she does battle with Donald Trump. Thanks for watching The Hill's special coverage of the Democratic National Convention. We will be back tomorrow morning for the regular episode of Rising on Fridays. You won't want to miss that. Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today on our Friday installment, reacting to everything that took place at the Democratic National Convention yesterday and all this week. We had that speech by Kamala Harris last night, but first we're going to get to some important news concerning another major candidate for now in the presidential contest. Take it away, Jess.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is set to make a major announcement Friday afternoon. This comes as his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, said earlier this week that the pair could exit the race. He filed paperwork in Arizona on Wednesday to have his name removed from the ballot. His campaign confirmed this to The Hill.
Shanahan also dropped a bombshell when speaking about their prospects. She and RFK Jr. might not just drop out, they could be endorsing Donald Trump. Now, polls have showed that this independent candidate has pulled votes from Biden, Harris, and from Trump as well. If he does get out of the race and throw his support behind Trump, what does that mean for Harris? Now, conservative personalities Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly have weighed in on her Sirius XM show. Let's watch them discussing it.
I think it'll help Trump, probably. I don't really know, but I know for a fact that Bobby running third party would hurt Trump because there is a big overlap in their voters. And it's not on all the issues. They disagree on a bunch of issues. But anyone who thinks the current system is corrupt is not voting for Kamala Harris.
Kelly referenced polling conducted in swing states showing how tight the race is, but RFK could break that if he gets out. Let's watch.
He may not have the votes that he had maybe, 6 months ago when he was polling more like 11%, but he truly could swing this election if the people getting ready to vote for him did what he asked them to do and voted for, let's say, in this case, Trump.
So we are waiting to see what RFK Jr. is going to say later today. We don't know, but we've heard some reporting. I have some reason to believe as well. I do think he's going to be getting out of the race. Nicole Shanahan was pretty clear that they do not want to be seen as helping Kamala Harris win. And while the ticket has pulled votes from both parties and from independents, people who are not voting for either party, there is, I think, slightly more overlap with the Trump campaign. And so RFK Jr. getting out, endorsing Trump, even that means a tiny number of votes moving into the Trump column. That could be all it takes to decide this election. So we will see if that's what happens.
I might even take it a step further, Robbie. I don't think it's just that they don't want to be seen as helping Kamala Harris win. I think it's pretty clear to me, at least, that Nicole Shanahan doesn't want to help Kamala Harris win. She said it's never been our intention to be a spoiler candidate.
Right, no, it's genuine. I agree.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to be seen at doing it. They don't want it to happen. They're against her.
Which leads me to a new conspiracy theory I have about the RFK Jr. campaign. I believe it's possible. They talk to Trump, they talk strategy. He stays on the ballot, and he could do this while still dropping out of the race. He could say, I'm no longer seeking, the presidency, but once you fight to get on a ballot, a lot of the times you're stuck there. They're already printed and what have you. They have their timelines.
It's going to be state by state whether he actually can get off the ballot.
Like he did in Arizona, he could strategically only pull out in states where he was drawing more votes from Trump and stay in states where he's drawing more votes from Kamala Harris.
He could do that. Look, I don't blame him for getting out, for endorsing Trump, for wanting to use whatever leverage he can. The Democrats, not mostly the Republicans, although maybe they were up to no good as well. I'd be perfectly willing to believe it. But what I do know is that the Democratic Party, Democratic activists, did everything they could to fight RFK Jr.'s participation in this race. The Biden campaign, back when it was the Biden campaign, oh so many moons ago, had hired activists to a task force to monitor the RFK Jr. situation and do whatever they could to make it more difficult, to fight him, not just in the way that campaigns are fighting each other, but to fight him legally, to make it more difficult for him to be on the ballot. In New York, they succeeded. Democratic activists brought a court case that was going to disqualify him from the ballot on a complete technicality. So that's what the Democratic Party was doing. Now, both parties were complicit in keeping him off the debate stage. Trump and Biden said, they don't agree on anything except we will not include RFK Jr. on the debate stage. The mainstream media was perfectly willing to go along with that. They didn't push back, even though he was arguably had qualified under the former debate criteria of 15%. It had to be 15% in a couple polls. I looked at the polls. It looked to me like he would arguably qualify based on that. Didn't care, didn't matter to them. They were not going to let the American voters hear from him in this election that's all about the health of democracy itself. No, we can't show more choices. So he was kept out, and so it's come to this. And then his poll numbers started to dip back down because he just couldn't get the attention, the media attention these other figures were getting by being on the debate stage. So he's doing what he can, and it sounds like he's going to be endorsing Trump, maybe in exchange for some kind of inclusion if Trump were to win the election. As an independent candidate, when you're not even running to build up a party, the Libertarian and Green Party candidates are at least trying to get, better ballot access for the next cycle, more raise money for the next cycle, that kind of thing. Honestly, it makes sense given the constraints on our system, which utterly support a myopic two-party duopoly.
I have to be careful because I keep saying things on Rising that kind of come true. Remember when we initially covered the phone call about, you're going to be so great, Bobby Kennedy. Drop out and endorse me. It's going to be so big for you. He sounded like an LA talent agent. I love that phone call. But when we covered it, I said, what position would it be that RFK Jr. would want? And I said Health and Human Services, and then subsequently there was reporting that is what was discussed. But we don't know for sure. This was people close to the matter that leaked this to the press. Do I think that that's a good position for him? No. I mean, he has strong feelings on vaccines, on the pharmaceutical industry, and I think those feelings are good and valid. But when I look at his experience, it's in, being an environmental lawyer. That should be where he's placed within the administration.
Yeah,
Will Donald Trump care that much about the environment to put him there?
And they're apart
trying to
on
get
that
rid of it.
issue.
They are. And so
Yeah.
Can you imagine RFK Jr. as the head of Health and Human Services? I think we need someone more experienced in that position. That would be very scary.
I'm not sure I would find it very scary. I would like to see him in a position of some kind of ensuring some kind of compliance with the First Amendment in terms of the behavior of government bureaucrats. That's what I would like to see, like an advisory role to make sure that the messaging from federal agencies to social media companies is consistent with the First Amendment and is not pressuring them to take down content. I think that would be a good role for him. If he's part of, a health advisory role that is part not requiring people to get to comply with COVID mandates, an anti-mandate role, that would also be something I would be interested in seeing him in. But I don't know.
Has anyone asked the worm what it wants?
Oh my goodness.
Isn't there someone you've forgotten to ask?
The worm, the bear.
Bobby Kennedy campaign.
Yeah. Look, I will miss his involvement in this race. I didn't agree with a lot of his policy positions, but he's an intellectually curious person who made himself available to independent, contrarian, libertarian, even left kinds of podcasts and spaces. He was responsive to our show. He's been interviewed here multiple times. There's something to be said for someone who is interested in the exchange of ideas enough that they'll come into friendly spaces, unfriendly spaces, hitting up the podcast ecosystem. That's a lot more than can be said of Joe Biden and Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So I have some affection for the attention he brought to the censorship issues, some of the mandates, and all of those other things. And if he could influence either of the major candidates to be more responsible on those issues, I would say the campaign has been a success.
Right. I think that what we've learned from the RFK Jr. campaign is that you can run as an independent in the United States of America. He's made it slightly easier for the next person who wants to do that.
Yes, and there's that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. We've got lots more to come on our show. More Rising right after this. We are not alone. Maybe. In an interview presented in a NewsNation special report, Confessions of a UFO Hunter, NewsNation special correspondent Ross Coulter spoke with Luis Elizondo, a former senior intelligence official and special agent who made international headlines when he revealed the Pentagon's secret UFO program in a bombshell New York Times story. During the special, Mr. Elizondo spoke of the government's knowledge of other life forms. Let's watch.
We've been recovering spacecraft. Alien spacecraft.
The United States has been involved in the recovery of objects, vehicles of unknown origin that are neither from our country or any other foreign country that we're aware of.
Alien bodies, biologics.
We as a nation have been interested in not only the vehicles themselves, but the occupants of these vehicles to include biological specimens.
Aliens, non-human intelligences, are real, and they have been engaging with humanity.
Ross, we're not alone. We are not alone in this universe, and it is a simple fact. And the U.S. government has been aware of that fact now for decades.
The full special airs tonight on NewsNation at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Joining us now to discuss it all is a journalist who has spent a lot of time covering UFOs at NewsNation, correspondent Brian Entin. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Brian, NewsNation really started reporting on the UFO issue last year with the David Grush interview. How does this new conversation move the story forward?
Yeah, well, I think we get more details from Elizondo. Our big exclusive with David Grush obviously opened up a huge can of worms. You had the hearings on Capitol Hill and all sorts of new questions about what the government really knows. But Elizondo is sort of the original whistleblower. He came forward years ago. He was actually running the program in the Pentagon that investigates UFOs and says that he became just like so upset that they weren't taking these things seriously. He felt like he was being stonewalled, that he left his job and has now gone public with his story. And you can tell in the interview that he did with Ross, I mean, he's very, very careful about what he's saying. We saw the same thing with David Grush, is because both of them still hold these national security clearances. They had the top level clearances. They have to be careful about what they say. A lot of what they say, they have to run through the Pentagon to see if they're allowed to actually talk about it. So Elizondo is careful. You know, you can tell there's more he wants to reveal that he won't. But still, you'll see in the special tonight, it's 9 o'clock Eastern on NewsNation. He says a lot.
Yeah, our viewers know that I have a lot of skepticism of these stories precisely because of the withholding that takes place from the people who are interviewed. They say they can't explain, it's a security, it's a clearance matter, it's a legal matter, but if you were the person to reveal where the physical evidence, the physical remains of alien life is being kept, I mean, there's physical evidence to the things they're alleging, not just that lights have been seen in the skies by various people, but that there's some remains that's in a warehouse, that's in the possession of the government. Well, then my next question is always, well, where and why can't you tell me? Your reasons that you can't tell me don't seem as significant as the fact that if you did explain, this would be the most important revelation in all of human history, and you're saying there's some technical legal reason you can't give me more? It raises my, my BS meter.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's fair, Robbie. And look, I'm a skeptic too. I think it's healthy to go into these stories as a skeptic, just like you would as any other story. Elizondo, he does give more information about locations than other people that we've interviewed in the past, which was interesting. And you're going to see in the special. I mean, he talks about Health and Human Services and says that they had some of these, they call them biologics. So, when you hear like they have aliens, you think like the movies and all of the little creatures that we've seen on TV, but that's not necessarily the case. I mean, he talks about the fact that some of these biologics may have come from beneath the ocean. They may not even be coming from outer space. And a biologic, it could be something as small as, like something they found on a rock. It's just something that scientists have discovered is non-human and is evidence that there's something else out there. And in terms of locations, I mean, he does give a few. I mean, he makes clear that he doesn't know where this evidence, these biologics are being held right now at the moment, but he talks about the Department of Health and Human Services. And he names a couple of other U.S. agencies too. He says that they've been passed around from agency to agency over the years so that different experts, can study them, try to figure out exactly what these things are.
Now, I have to say, I'm a skeptic that aliens aren't real. I think it's more likely than not that we're not alone in the universe. And there are so many people who have been whistleblowers who have risked losing their careers, losing their security clearance over what they're telling the public because they feel it's so important. And Lou said he really stuck his neck out to share this story. He left his Pentagon job and lost his family home. Can you tell us about that?
He was in the highest pay bracket for a federal employee. He was making a good living. He was at the top of his field in terms of being, an intelligence officer. He was the head of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Program, which studies UFOs. But again, he says he became so frustrated with the fact that he didn't believe that the government was really letting them go far enough. And he felt like there was a cover-up going on, which is something we also heard from David Grush, that, that the government, that there's a secret part of the government that knows these secrets and doesn't want them exposed. That whether that reason is national security, that's something that Elizondo talks about tonight. I mean, there's this claim that you've got different governments trying to replicate the technology of some of these UFOs for national defense, which goes back to Robbie's point. I mean, that could be one reason that it is all kept so secret still. I mean, let's not forget, I mean, you had these hearings, real hearings on Capitol Hill, lawmakers on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, coming forward and saying we're trying to get information and we feel like we're being stonewalled. So, is it really like aliens, like I said, from the movies, and do they really have some crash craft? We don't know, but it does appear that there's something that they're keeping secret.
Yeah, the government withholding information is a totally plausible aspect of this. We know that the government, for instance, knows more about the origins of COVID than they have disclosed, even when everyone in Congress and the president vote for and sign a bill saying more disclosures here. We still don't get them because there's this level of knee-jerk secrecy. So that part is totally understandable. You brought up, the flurry of hearings of congressional interest and activity that took place a few months ago as a result of a lot of the great reporting that NewsNation did on this front. Was there any, where was that left off? What did anything come of that? There was, a lot of frustration on the part of the Congress members asking questions and looking into it. Was there some mandate for action that came out of it?
So, I mean, the Pentagon now has a program where they say they're going to investigate anyone from within the government who comes forward and says that they have information about UFOs that they feel like is being covered up. So that's something new. There's also going to be more hearings. Apparently, we've heard that for a while, but they've been in the planning stages. Obviously, there's a lot going on right now in politics and with the presidential election. So, that may be part of the delay. But, if you watch the hearings, I mean, there's videos out there that the Pentagon has released themselves. I mean, there's the Tic Tac video. You guys have seen it. It's like that little Tic Tac looking object that the fighter pilots were able to film out over the ocean. They saw it twice. They saw it one time off the coast of Florida, one time off the coast of California. And the Pentagon has released those videos and said, we don't know what this thing is. It's clearly not technology that the U.S. government has. I mean, the way that it's flying, you can tell it, it descends like 50,000 feet. I forget in how many seconds. I mean, it's not something that our planes could do. So, they've released some of the videos themselves and said we don't know what these things are. So it's interesting when you really start to think about it.
So, Brian, that interview with Lou Elizondo looks like a bombshell interview. Can you give us a preview of what else we can expect in this special tonight?
Yeah, so basically, he goes through, and again, he's got the national security clearances. He has to be careful about what he can say, but he talks about the program that he was a part of. He talks about the way that he feels he was stonewalled. He talks about where he believes the crashed craft, the biologics, were held within the government. He also talks about these private companies and their role in all of this. And he names names, which a lot of other people haven't done in the past. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing. What a lot of these whistleblowers say is that there's these private contracts with these companies over the years, which have helped to keep the secret and helped to keep it out of the government, the government being in full control and there being disclosure. So he talks a lot about that. And he talks about what his family has gone through since he came forward, again, losing his job, and sort of, the implications of all of that. So the special is at 9:00 Eastern tonight, Friday night. And then we've got a live special, which I'm anchoring at 10:00, where we're going to have a panel of experts to kind of go over what Elizondo said, how believable is it, that kind of thing. So it should be an interesting night. Especially if you're sick of politics by now. It's something you can get your mind off the DNC for one night.
Yes, this is a very refreshing palate cleanser. Thank you so much, Brian, for previewing that for us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
California Governor Gavin Newsom joined Fox News' Brett Baier, where he was pressed on his progressive policies. Let's watch.
The writing of how the prosecution for small crimes.
Oh, Prop 47.
47, I'm sorry.
Yeah, which is, by the way, the 10th toughest threshold in the United States of America, meaning you can steal up to $950 of goods and it will be charged as a misdemeanor. You can steal $2,500 in the state of Texas. Why you're not focusing on those other 40 states is beyond me. 10th toughest felony threshold in the United States of America.
That That's a fact. That she was a tough prosecutor in California is going to
You remember her primary for president? She was attacked from the left for being too tough, for being prosecutor, for having a prosecutorial mindset. So look, I mean, all these things, this is all fair game. But at the end of the day, she's got a record of accomplishments as being part of the Biden-Harris administration. We've seen...
Newsom was also questioned about new data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that showed U.S. job growth was significantly weaker than initially reported. Let's watch.
Even with the adjustment today of 818,000 jobs.
Which is a little weird, don't you think?
That means 14.9 million jobs since they got into office. That is, Brett, 11 times more than the last 3 Republican administrations combined. The lowest black unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, the lowest unemployment for women in our lifetime, an American manufacturing policy, an industrial policy that's worker-centered, that's advantaging red and rural districts of this country more than it is even blue and urban.
Baier also asked Newsom why Vice President Kamala Harris has been so quiet on policy and has made it all personal. Let's watch.
When she ran in 2019 for president, she had a lot of policies, specific policy ideas that now we only have paper statements that they are saying that's completely different. Banning fracking, where she is on Medicare for all, immigration, all of these things are a 180. Is she going to explain that to us tonight?
Well, she's been part of the Biden-Harris administration. She's been in office
exactly for the last
three and a half years. So she has a record of accomplishments that I'll put up. I mean, come on.
I'll say this. I do appreciate the Democrats that are willing to go on Fox News and face contrary questioning. They're not all willing to do it. Gavin Newsom is one. Pete does it. Amy Klobuchar has done it.
Yep.
I was watching some Fox this week. A couple of them were on Laura Ingraham. Dean Phillips went on with Laura Ingraham. Did a very good job. So I think you look tougher and like you're actually interested in what the 50% of the country that does not feel the way Democrats feel, where they're at, and meeting them and discussing with them and trying to convince them that the Biden-Harris agenda is good for them. I give props for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like out of nowhere, there's very good communicators in the Democratic Party, Robbie. I mean, we know that Pete Buttigieg was kind of on the come up. He's a young guy. Gavin Newsom's been around for a while. People like Dean Phillips have been around for a while. Nancy Pelosi's been in office for a while and hasn't been doing what she's done recently. And so it feels like it all came out of nowhere. And I'm a little bit awestruck at it all. Since when does Gavin Newsom defend the record of California's toughness on crime on Fox News? And it's like they suddenly woke up and learned how to campaign. So it's very shocking, but it's good to see that there are people communicating and defending their policies and not just letting these accusations stand.
Sure. I mean, I do think that the Democrats, realized finally at some point over the last 4 years that a lot of what they were saying on crime, for instance, was not popular. And no, people want you to arrest carjackers and looters and rioters and people robbing convenience stores and, of course, murderers. And they want to clear out encampments of crazy people, homeless, having drugs in the streets. And if you're not doing that, you have to explain why that's not happening. And, you can say that, well, it's because the legal system needs to be changed or the judges need to be changed or whatever it is, but you can't be for allowing that to continue. And so Gavin Newsom no longer is. He says, no, we're going to be as tough on crime as possible. Democrats understand that stuff. Democrats don't have to own as much their COVID policies anymore, which were deeply unpopular, including, Gavin Newsom, off for dinner at the French Laundry while everyone else is languishing under authoritarianism. But a lot of that is in the rearview mirror. And so, Democrats are, I think Brett Baier's right, largely running on vibes, but they're good and positive vibes, and it might very well work.
And I think it's important to say, Democrats' position, especially people like Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, and Mayor Eric Adams, their position on crime and how it should be punished has never wavered. It's just that Fox News have framed them as people who take on the views of people on the far left. No, they haven't. We've seen Kamala Harris be a tough prosecutor from day one in office. She's bragged about that. That's what her record shows. Her colleagues spoke about that last night at the DNC. The only thing that's changed is increasingly they're critical of the prison industrial complex. Slavery is still legal as punishment for a crime, according to the 14th Amendment. That is the law of the land of the United States. And we see prison labor frequently addressing a lot of the economic failures in our country. We had a warehouse, or rather a large beauty supply store, where all of the supplies were being put in a warehouse because it was closed down. All of that liquidation, all of those products were being processed by local prison labor.
We're against prison labor?
Yes, I think many people are against not having fair wages paid to these workers.
I don't even think prisoners are against
does.
prison labor. I think they'd rather work than be bored all day.
Well, then you should talk to them, Robbie.
I have talked to them.
You've talked to people in prison about how they feel about doing labor. I would love to hear about that
conversation. I have not personally talked to them. I've read media stories and interviews with prisoners who would rather...
As I was saying, people who are paid minimum wage in the United States of America are not happy that America's largest corporations can contract that labor out for $1.50, far under minimum wage. That brings down wages in the United States. This is an unfair circumstance in the United States when you look at the 65% of families across the U.S. who are subject to high fines and fees because they have a family member who's in prison and they have to pay those fees, and they're struggling to pay basic necessities. This is the reality of the prison industrial complex, and that's what needs to change.
I don't agree. I think it's fine to put people in prison, and I don't think they should be necessarily forced to do really difficult labor while in prison, but if they want to work and they want to earn a little bit of money to spend to make their lives in prison somewhat more enjoyable, I think that's fine, and I think they probably want to do that. I do not pretend to be an expert on prisons or criminal justice, but I work at Reason Magazine that does a lot on criminal justice reform, and the sense I get is that one of the worst things about prison is that it's often very boring, and people want more, both more, educational stimulation, more ability to read, to do classes, to do activities, and yes, also to do work. Look, I don't think work is not something this is, I think, a problem, the way the left thinks about this, that work is not something to be demonized, that most people get some kind of value out of doing some level of work. Obviously, people should be overworked to death or forced to do work they don't want to do, I guess. But work is itself not something bad. It can be enriching and rewarding, and it's certainly better than sitting around in prison all day with nothing to do. That sounds like real torture to me.
Slavery. We're talking about slavery, which is legal as punishment
not talking about
for
slavery?
crime. Because yes, people in prison
yes, you can
are
imprison
forced
people
to do
for
labor.
for committing a crime.
Yes, that is the reality in the United States. We're
Okay,
not
I don't think
talking
it's
about
slavery to
voluntary
imprison people.
labor and force them to work. That is what slavery is forcing people to labor. And so there are a lot of criticisms about how crimes are treated in the United States. People who use marijuana one time, are they a threat to our society?
I think all drugs should be legal, and we shouldn't imprison anyone for doing drugs.
Right, and so this is what Democrats are talking about. It's very
There aren't a lot of
agreeable
people in prison for doing marijuana.
Yes, there are,
no,
Robbie, and
not.
these are very
It's not
agreeable
true.
things. That is true. There
It's
are
not
people
true.
who are in prison for having too much marijuana, and that is considered a crime, and in some states a felony, and they are put in prison for many years.
It happens, but there's not a lot of, and I don't
There
think it should
is
happen.
a lot
By the
of
way,
it, Robbie.
I think it
Let's
should
pull
be.
up the statistics on that.
Look, I'm saying this because I used to assume naively that the vast majority of people in prison were there for like nonviolent drug crimes. It's not actually the case. I used to think that too. Like I have been corrected by people. Again, people who support legalizing all drugs as I do. I don't think anyone should be in jail for that stuff, but our prisons have violent criminals and have illegal immigrants in them. We don't have a ton of totally nonviolent. We have some, and they should not be in prison. Don't get me wrong, but
So the last estimate we have
you're not
on
gonna find
this
it right now.
was 40,000 for simple possession of marijuana in the United States. People
That's a
in
raw
prison.
number. That's not a percentage.
Yes, it's an estimate of how many people are locked up for that, because sometimes when people are tried, they're tried for multiple offenses. You can have an officer trying to search your car and you resist that, and then suddenly they tack on another offense of resisting an officer just because you're nervous you have marijuana in your car. So that's what Democrats talk about, which are very popular common sense criminal justice reforms. And then you have people on the right who are paid for oftentimes by these companies who benefit from prison labor to say the Democrats are too far left on prison, they're not prosecuting crimes. And it's a talking point because they have an agenda, because they rely on this labor to keep their profit margins high.
All right. Well, I don't think Democrats are going to be talking about reducing prison labor anytime soon, because my guess would be most people, again, support imprisoning violent criminals. We don't have any disagreement on the need to keep nonviolent, especially nonviolent drug offenders out of prison. I don't even think any of that should be illegal. I totally do not mistake me for thinking people should be in prison for that or any of that kind of thing. And I guess I don't think that labor in prison should be mandatory, but the opportunity to work and earn a little bit of money to make your stay more tolerable, I wouldn't take that away from prisoners. You would take that away? You would say they can't do it unless they're going to be paid minimum wage?
I disagree with slavery, Robbie. Yes, that is
But
how I
okay,
feel.
but let's say, I'm a prisoner, I'm in prison, I want to, do this job for $2 an hour, I'm willing to do it.
The federal
You're
minimum
gonna say-
wage should be the federal minimum
But
wage.
what if I say I'm willing to do it for $2?
That doesn't matter. The federal minimum
You're
wage
gonna, okay,
should
I
be-
consent, and you're saying I don't consent to this exchange,
Because
I'm
this
making
is-
it illegal.
Yeah, the economy is a system of workers, and if someone's labor is valued at $7.25 an hour, usually it's worth far more.
But no,
Would
this
be
person's labor is
breaking-
valued at $2 an hour because
No,
they're a
someone's
federal
labor is
prisoner.
not valued at what the lowest
It's
price they're
labor.
willing
It's
to accept.
valued at whatever the person is willing to pay them and they're willing to receive. There is no tangible, physical. There's no golden rules written down that says how much you are worth or your time is worth. This person is willing to be paid, is willing to accept $2 for this labor because they're a prisoner and they really just want something to do. And this person is willing to pay them that. And you're saying that even though there's total consent in between this exchange, you don't consent to it as a third party in the government and you're going to make it illegal.
I'm not the government, but I'll explain why that would be a bad
I think that's
exchange in our
immoral.
economy. If you let me speak and
Go ahead.
answer your question, I will. So the reason that is bad is because there are other workers that need more than $2 an hour because their housing is not provided by the U.S. government because they're not in prison. And it is bad for the labor market and for the economy
So
as
I
a
don't
whole.
have a right to do this job because of
Robbie,
other people.
if you don't let me finish
ahead.
speaking and you just interrupt me every time,
Okay.
this is not a conversation.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you are in prison, your housing is covered, your food is covered. It's all paid for by what? The government. So now you have the government subsidizing America's biggest corporations for their production. That is a bad economic practice. Those corporations and American labor should be done with people paid a living wage so they can cover their food and housing in the United States, not pull the wage down because that labor is available. It's bad for the economic system as a whole, not for the government, but for the market and the workers. A market should determine someone's wages, not someone whose housing is subsidized by the government.
This is the market determining it. You're wanting a system where you determine it. The market is what's determining it but you're trying to set policies that say exactly what you're allowed to be set. The market would be, this is what I'm willing to work for, this is what you're willing to pay for me, and we come to some arrangement, or we don't, and then that doesn't take place. You're saying
but this is
your
policies
in prison,
not
should
in their free will.
supersede the
That's
market.
not a free market decision if someone's imprisoned against their will. So the market works well if someone's in prison? Robbie, that doesn't make any sense.
You're trying to put specifications on under what conditions people in prison would be allowed to do work, and I'm saying if they want to do work and someone wants to pay them, that's fine.
Into slavery, Robbie. That's not the same.
No, you're saying they should be forced into joblessness.
No, I didn't. They can have the option to work for the federal minimum wage.
At a rate you've set. At a rate you've determined is fair. The rate they've determined fair is the two people involved in the exchange. I mean, this is my problem with the minimum wage, is that it's the government deciding what's fair instead of the people involved in the trade of money for labor.
Okay, we're going to leave this one here. More rising after this. The times are changing. At the DNC yesterday, a different kind of speaker took the stage. When a train derailment caused toxic vinyl chloride to spill in East Palestine, Ohio, John Russell, being from a small town in Ohio, a short drive away, decided to cover a story in his own backyard. He used his platform on social media to tell the story of the derailment's impact from the perspective of the people who live in East Palestine. He's since dedicated his career to telling stories that matter most to working people, from Trump holding a rally near the site of UAW workers on strike, despite not being there in support of the workers or inviting them to the rally, to reporting on how billionaires are killing NASCAR. John Russell has used his voice for the working class, and that voice echoed through the convention hall at the DNC last night. Take a listen to labor reporter John Russell.
But populism that insists we are too different to get along, is just divide and conquer by a different name. There's another sort of populism with roots in this party that we in West Virginia know well. They called us rednecks back in the 1920s because striking workers from all different races wore red bandanas around their necks as they fought and died for respect and a living wage.
My friend John Russell joins us now to discuss. Thanks for coming on the show, John.
Thanks, Jessica. That's actually the first time I had hair and makeup. And fun fact, the mullet is now union strong. So the barbers in hair and makeup, they're unionized, and we're having a great time.
I did see Appalachia podcast post a photo of you and JD Vance and said these two guys from Appalachia spoke at the conferences, and I'm going to go with the one who was in Pearl Snaps. So it was beautiful. Can you speak to how you were received there at the DNC?
Yeah. I was glad to be there. I was glad that they saw the work that we're doing at More Perfect Union, which is really just about how working class people have been getting screwed by bad policies forever, and they gave that a platform at the DNC. And I wanted to bring a lot of the people that we meet on reporting trips in East Palestine, or union people joining the union for the first time in rural Tennessee, and try to lift those up on the stage and challenge this party to get its power from the organized working class and the labor movement that we see growing so much. So I was glad for that.
Yeah, we don't see mainstream media go out and talk to workers and ask what they think. It's usually our politics is translated by DC consultants and Democratic or Republican strategists. But you and I both go out in the field for a more perfect union. I learned so much about the country, whether it was you were on the Warren campaign, I was on the Bernie campaign, we were knocking doors all across Iowa in 2020. We both had a lot of experiences where we learn about the country from being in it. Can you just speak to that a little bit and how you see this election with what you know from being on the ground?
Well, yeah, that's one of the great parts about the job. I wonder if you feel this way, but going to every pocket of the country and covering, ordinary working class people, their stories might be very different. We might be covering the corporate greed that caused East Palestine to be exposed to so many chemicals. In one instance, we might be covering a native tribe whose sacred land is on top of the biggest copper deposit in North America. Those are very different populations, but when you travel around and do this work, you start to realize that although people might be different in their circumstances, the principle of what they're fighting for is the same, which is, survival and respect and dignity in a world that for decades now, my adult life and back a couple of generations has been run by the richest people on earth, who are counting on exploiting those differences, surface level differences, and getting, working class people to, fear, mistrust, and hate each other. And you begin to realize that we're pointing fingers in the wrong directions a lot of the times at each other instead of the wealthy people that run the world. So that work makes it really obvious. And I'd be remiss not to mention when I was speaking on stage at the DNC. Well, first of all, the showrunners asked if I was going to go into wardrobe and get a wardrobe change, being a journalist and everything, but I decided to wear the pearl snap up there. But another thing that was on it was this melon pin here. And I wanted to say, speaking, this party really should have allowed representation from a Palestinian voice. And why I say that is, this needs to be a Big Tent party. It wants to represent everybody. And you don't win by running away from really tough issues or suppressing voices. You win by recognizing that the struggles of, children in East Palestine, Ohio, wondering why they're dealing with chemical exposure, at the core of it are the same as, a Palestinian child wondering why American bombs are falling on their family. We are all connected in a fight for survival. And I really wanted to challenge the party to rise to the scale of our problems. And that's what this was about. Didn't really show up on camera that much, but I wanted to say that.
So the head of the Teamsters spoke at the Republican National Convention. There is an effort in conservative circles to at least speak to working people in perhaps a cultural sense. I'm not sure I would say the policies are necessarily changing, although there's some in the GOP that would like to make the party more policy friendly to labor. What do you make of the efforts going on the other side that, frankly, are working on some level in terms of getting people who identify as blue collar, have a blue collar background, to identify culturally with the Republican Party, even as the policies don't change that much?
Yeah, I think we're being offered a fake version of populism from the other side, especially from J.D. Vance. I said in the speech that populism that amplifies our differences is nothing but another name for divide and conquer. If your brand of populism is relying on increasing the divisions between working people, then it's nothing but the age-old game that Republicans play so well. They talk about anything but what they're going to do materially for working class people, because at the end of the day, they're really not doing much. But for the longest time, we hadn't, at least from my perspective, had a real alternative to that. Part of what I wanted to lift up to the party was the chance right now to offer a real alternative to what the right is doing that is based in solidarity, and that my region of the country, Appalachia, knows well. We have a lot of muscle memory from the time when the only route that you had to fight for yourself was to join together, like black and white coal miners did 100 years ago, and fight the government and the coal mine companies that ran the entire state for a share of the wealth that you created. So, when the right is offering that to us, I think we need a strong alternative, and that's what the speech was about.
Now, I remember going off to Nebraska, meeting with a bunch of railroad union guys, and they talked about, the Democratic Party straying away from having workers be the focus. They see people, with a big D Democrat next to their name in Congress, fighting for policies that run counter to the needs of working people. And there's been this idea that policies that do right by regular American workers are these far left progressive communist policies rather than just common sense, what's best for the economy and what's best for the country. And it seems that the DNC, based on Walz's vice presidential candidacy, based on Shawn Fain being a huge part of the party, is kind of circling back and has found its way back home where the issues are exactly as I said. Common sense economic policy issues that do right by workers. Do you feel like you're seeing that change as well in the people you talk to at the DNC?
Well, I think we're at a crossroads at the DNC. It's always going to be the last place to get the news as, an organization that's fundamentally based in DC at the heart of power and at the height of power. But being the last place to get the news, I would say that the news is starting to show up. I was happy to see so many strong labor voices up there. I was even pleasantly surprised with the Walz pick. I think politicians are, creatures of survival, and they're starting to take note, even by inviting someone who does work like I do onto the stage. I think they recognize it, but, our problems are too big to wait around to make that decision any longer. I think we have been living in the hangover of the Clinton party. NAFTA hit my region of the country like a ton of bricks, and that is still a dirty word around there. And I think, not only would it be the right thing to do, but it would be good politics to return as far and fast to the labor roots of this party as possible. I talked about a lot of people that I come across in the work that I do are looking for a political home. And, they're not necessarily happy with either choice. And the folks who are speaking to that group of people right now are folks like Shawn Fain. And the more notes that the party can take from leaders like that, I think would help their chances to win elections.
John Russell,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on.
Conservative commentator Ann Coulter has come under fire this week for comments she made about the son of vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. Walz's 17-year-old son, Gus, grew emotional on Wednesday evening as his father delivered his speech accepting the vice presidential nomination at the Democratic National Convention. Gus wept with pride and emotion for his dad, saying, "That's my dad." While many expressed an outpouring of support for Gus, some were swift to verbally attack the teenager online. Conservative media pundit Ann Coulter posted a tweet on X that she has since deleted, which responded to an article with a photo of Gus in tears. She wrote, "Talk about weird, ... Since then, social media has been a place of outpouring support for Tim Walz's son, who has a nonverbal learning disorder, ADHD, and anxiety. Former First Lady Michelle Obama swooped in, writing in a post on Instagram, "I was touched to see Gus Walz's joy when his dad, Tim, took the stage. Thankful for you showing us all what real love looks like, Gus." Former Obama staffer Tommy Vitor wrote on X, "I can see why a child loving their parents would feel foreign to you."
Republican Congressman Mark Molinaro of New York wrote, "Look, I may not agree with Tim Walz's prescription for America's challenges, but I've always believed in shielding our children from attack. His son Gus, our kids, neurodivergent and of all abilities, ought to be celebrated and supported."
Last night, Coulter attempted to walk back her comments. She wrote, "I took it down as soon as someone told me he's autistic," misspelling the word autistic. She continued to quote, "But it's Democrats who go around calling everyone weird, thinking it's hilariously funny." So I will say, very different to call a grown man like J.D. Vance weird for his policy choices and then call someone's 17-year-old son weird who has a nonverbal learning disorder.
Yeah, it was an inappropriate and cruel comment, and she shouldn't have done it. Ann Coulter is a very provocative commentator. She's said a lot of not good things over the years. This is one of them. She shouldn't have said it. She apologized. I think politicians, kids should basically be, I mean, underage kids, not Hunter Biden, but not the Kushners, but underage kids should be outside the realm of
Actual kids as in children,
yes,
not offspring.
not just
Yes.
the people they've given birth to at some point in their long careers, should be off limits. And, you know, most people on both sides seem to agree with that, although they occasionally violate it, as it was violated here. It's cool that he was inspired by his dad, and it wasn't anything inappropriate about the emotional reaction. It would have been appropriate. I don't know specifically what his neurodivergency alleged status is, but it's fine to be excited for your family member. There was no reason for a inappropriate or a condemning reaction from anyone.
Yeah, he has a nonverbal learning disorder, ADHD, and anxiety. I think that seeing people so quick to attack him was really telling.
Well, I don't know, people. We're talking about a person here.
No, there were a lot of posts on Twitter attacking
randos
from various conservative commentators and using the attack line weird, which I think is because they are triggered, maybe, because they've been called weird. And again, so different to say, calling women who don't have children yet cat ladies because they've chosen a career over starting a family and focusing on them when there are tons of men without wives or children and they have a pet dog. No one talks about the weird dog men of Silicon Valley, but we should. No, we shouldn't.
I don't have a dog.
I think, attacking people for their personal preferences is something that's weird. It's okay to be like, stop being weird. Weird becomes a bad and maybe not so good thing to say when you're talking about someone who's vulnerable. And the difference is punching up versus punching down.
Ugh, I don't like that distinction, but go ahead and explain
it. Of course you don't,
it.
Robbie. But someone like J.D. Vance, who's in a position of a lot of power, talking about stripping people of their civil liberties, is someone, it's okay to say, hey, this guy's weird. Someone who is proud of their dad and who is 17 years old and has a learning disability doesn't need to be insulted for who he is as a person. It was a beautiful moment.
I've already said I agree with that, so yes, I
know,
I
I'm
agree.
not arguing with you. I'm
but
speaking
the
about what's
punching
in the
up,
news,
punching
Robbie.
down thing, I think, is often used. Not in this case. It's just you don't have to criticize a teenager. Like, leave the teenagers alone. I mean, I will say there's a lot of people in liberal circles who spend liberal journalists spend way too much time trying to cancel teenagers for controversial things they said on social media or when they were teenagers, which I am totally against. I hate how cancel culture has been weaponized against young people who are not perfect at all times. But the punching up, punching down thing is often when somebody says that, brings that up, like, oh, you can make fun of this person but not this person because this person's powerful. Well, they're usually saying that often from a position of power themselves. Like, who has power in the relative situation is often not being well flushed out by the person is assuming that I have the right to insult someone, but I cannot be insulted because I have no power and you're more powerful. Journalists in particular like to say this, even though they have plenty of power to ruin people's lives by digging up controversial things they used to say. So it's not my favorite dichotomy. I would just say politicians themselves are, of course, within the limits. They're not off limits. You can make fun of people as people make fun of Trump, and Trump makes fun of people, and it's all fine. And we don't need to. We can fret the decline of civil discourse, but it's just not coming back. It's okay to make fun of
people with disabilities.
No, politicians. Of course, it's not fun to.
So
make
yeah,
fun of people with disabilities.
Yeah, well, I think that's the difference there then, is like journalists, even if they're liberal journalists, libs of TikTok is not a liberal place. They make fun of teachers and people who have never consented to being in the public space for doing things let me finish speaking, Robby, for doing things that are not favorable to their political ideology. And then you have other journalists, maybe they're liberal, criticizing influencers for using the N-word and things like that in a private setting. That's very different from criticizing someone for simply having a disability.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should be criticized or made fun of for having a disability, period, full stop. I mean, what libs of...
But that's what punching up versus punching down is. That's what I'm saying.
Well, then what... Okay, if that's what it is, then I don't have a problem with it.
Oh.
But I don't think that's how it's used all the time. If punching up, punching down is just don't make fun of someone with a disability, we don't need another term for it. We can just say don't make fun of someone with a disability, right?
Or like, I think it applies to, yes, people with a disability, but a lot of people who are not doing so well in society. Like, doing a stand-up set on people who are transgender, who are being attacked in the media constantly, just isn't funny, because those are people who are, you know, under fire in our society, who are struggling in our society, who are not treated as accepted in society. So making fun of them, it's one, not funny, not good comedy, and two, it's not good comedy because it is punching down.
Yeah, I'm not gonna join you there. I don't want to start telling comedians what is and is not funny. It's just like, literally, if it's funny or not. You know, Dave Chappelle has told jokes about people with lacking privilege that I sometimes think are funny and sometimes are not. I think there's a sort of paternalism by saying, to take the position that there's a group you cannot make fun of at all in any circumstance, which isn't quite, like, I'm not even sure people who identify that way would like to, you know, be considered so fragile that you can't insult them. Do you know what I mean?
I think there's a line to be towed, and if you're being mean, it's usually not funny. And I think that's why comedians are mad. They're like, I'm being canceled. It's like, no, dude, no one wants to watch your set. It's your job to make stuff that many people find funny.
Yeah, I mean, the line
you can't
between...
bully your audience into liking your comedy.
Well, sure. The line between whether it's mean and whether it's funny is I mean, it's subjective, but if it's good comedy, I think it's fine. And if it's not, it's mean. Like, it depends on the individual joke or how you do it. Like,
yeah.
You know, Louis C.K., who got canceled viciously for some of his personal behavior that was not good, but I still happen to think he was like, I don't even really like stand-up very much. I'm not a big fan of, I don't watch tons of comedy. I thought Louis C.K. was hilarious, and he made fun of all sorts of groups of people, and it was genuinely funny when he did it. And it didn't, it's whether it seems like it's coming from a place of actual malice or whether it's just a joke. And again, that's the performance, that's the setup. So there are cases where I think it's fine, and cases where I'm like, that's over the line because that's not funny, and that does seem mean-spirited, and cases where it's fine because
but that's what punching
you
down
believe the person is not actually evincing malice; they're just telling a joke.
Yeah, it's not that you can never talk about transgender people or people with disabilities. Shane Gillis has good bits on his
that's another
good
one.
With Down syndrome. Yeah, it's not that you can't talk about it. It's that being mean about it, and so punching down is what's not funny.
Or like, what about
and
South Park or Family Guy?
Antisocial. Yeah, that's the point. Not punching down. You can talk about it, but without being mean, and that seems to be what's exposed right now with the Gus Walz thing, is that so many conservatives don't understand the difference because so many of these people live chronically online lives disconnected from the general public, and then they say things that no one would ever say in a social setting because at the end of the day, these people are just so out of touch.
But punching up, punching down, I have to push back. I don't think it's about not just being mean. What it literally is about is if you occupy a place of relative hierarchy and power as part of your gender or racial group or wealth status or whatever, you should not criticize or make fun of or mock someone lower on a lower hierarchy than you. And my criticism of that is that power relationships are subjective sometimes and situational sometimes. For instance, you could be, you know, the most powerful whatever CEO or political or celebrity figure doesn't end up actually having that much power versus even a 22-year-old journalist when they find their tweet from when they were a teenager where they said something they shouldn't have had. It's relative to the situation. So that's why I don't like the terminology. But I, of course, agree with you that mean-spiritedness for the sake of mean-spiritedness is bad, and there are cases where the power separation. I wouldn't use power as the framing. I'd say it's just not nice to belittle a teenager, really for any reason. Just like leave kids out of things. And so I absolutely agree that this was not a good thing to do, and the criticism directed at Anne was justified, and so.
Yeah.
Okay. More Rising right after this. Former President Trump abruptly ended an interview with NewsNation on Thursday, citing a safety risk. Let's watch.
Sure. We're in danger standing here talking, so let's not talk any longer. No, I know about it, but they don't want me standing here. They don't want you standing here either. Have a good time. Thank you very much.
The less than 2-minute interview took place as an active manhunt was underway for an Arizona man who reportedly threatened to kill Trump. 66-year-old Ronald Lee Seifert was apprehended later Thursday, per the Cochise County Sheriff's Office. This latest security threat comes after the assassination attempt on his life in July. Since then, Trump has scaled back outdoor rallies and erected bulletproof glass around him when giving speeches outside. An investigation into the failures that led to Trump's near assassination is still ongoing, but more evidence is trickling in. According to a member of a congressional task force investigating, found the shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Crooks, used encrypted messaging accounts on various platforms located in Belgium, New Zealand, and Germany. This detail could help unlock the motive behind the shooting, which remains unknown. So, of course, still security threats for Donald Trump, giving that interview saying we're in danger right now. We haven't gotten an update if they found or apprehended this man, it seems.
Well, so no, they did apprehend the guy from social media. I don't know whether that was related to them wanting to get him out of that situation or not. Look, I'm glad to hear Secret Service, the security detail for Donald Trump, taking threats on his life seriously, given what happened. So good. Yeah, he was. I don't. The details of there. He was being interviewed by a reporter from our related channel, NewsNation. Yeah, they should not do those things in unsafe scenarios. I don't know if that's because of the social media threat. They did arrest that guy, who is someone with a kind of law enforcement past, was in trouble for not registering as a sex offender when he was supposed to, and other things. It might be another deranged lunatic type person. But yeah, Secret Service needs to take those kinds of things seriously, given the catastrophic failure just 2 months ago that led Donald Trump to be nearly killed after being shot at by a man on a rooftop that should have absolutely been secured. It taking way too long for the Secret Service to react. Trump not pulled down, even though the police knew. In fact, a police officer who tried to engage the shooter by then. That shooter never should have been on the roof in the first place. We've gone over all of this so many times, and we're still waiting for more detailed answers about who is at fault for the roof not being secured, for the information not being transmitted to the people surrounding Trump fast enough. We still have to get answers to all of that. The director at the time of the Secret Service did correctly resign over the failure. So, they need to be taking these things seriously, and it's good to know that they are. They have to, it's the difference between saying, I hate Donald Trump and something bad should happen to him, and, a specific threat on his life, if he's, especially from someone who's in the same vicinity as him. This was someone in Arizona. He's in Arizona today to give a speech. So RFK Jr. is making his own announcement from Arizona. That's why there's some speculation that he might be joining up with Trump. So that would be two political candidates, Donald Trump, and if RFK Jr. gets out of the race, someone who was a candidate for the presidency until just now. And there are some crazy people out there who want to hurt them. So Secret Service needs to take these things very seriously.
Yeah, we're at a point in time where funding to the Department of Defense still exceeds any other nation, and we have billions of dollars unaccounted for. They've failed audit after audit, and it just makes sense that right now there's heightened investment in keeping the candidates safe, especially after an assassination attempt, that this is not business as usual, Secret Service in a world where people would never think to do such a thing. I do believe that there was some sense. Well, I do believe that that is what contributed to the, security failure the day that Trump was nearly assassinated in in Pennsylvania, in Butler, Pennsylvania. I think that it was just the result of people thinking no one would try something like this. Very clearly, that's not the world we live in, and we make adjustments. After 9/11, TSA became extremely strict. We have not seen, to our public knowledge, that is the reality of what's happening for Donald Trump. Why was this man investigated when Donald Trump was already speaking? Why did he have to be whisked away? Why didn't we see this social media and send officers directly to the address? Why were the resources not there for the response to happen quickly? When we clearly have so much extra money going to defense, so many dollars they can't even keep track of them. It's not an issue of the dollars not being there for the security of the country. This is for the security of our country.
Well, right.
And it makes sense to heighten security, whether it's FBI responding to threats on social media or Secret Service. And it should really be both, Secret Service being there at the rallies.
Yeah, the defense budget is billions of dollars. We don't need billions of dollars spent on Donald Trump or RFK Jr. or Kamala Harris's personal security. We need, an acceptable amount of money spent to keep them safe from threats of violence and actual violence. And I agree with you that they were clearly not doing a good enough job. I often have the sense that, we're all expected to, like TSA, we're all expected to endure all of this laborious security theater that there's very little evidence makes anyone actually safer. And it's like the citizens are treated like we're not taking safety seriously enough. But then whenever there's a mass shooting or a big school shooting or a assassination attempt or something goes really wrong, then we always learn about all the failures of the law enforcement, of the people whose job it is to handle these things, that they didn't follow up on legitimate tips, or they didn't follow the protocols, or they didn't do what they're supposed to be doing. But we the citizens are always treated like, we're not sacrificing enough, or no, we're not paying enough attention. See something, say something. We don't speak up when we know something's wrong. It's not true. There's the failure time and time again is on the administrative, the official response, and there's not enough accountability when they get it wrong.
Yeah, I think more often it's the case that we hear about some hero citizen or someone had a lemonade stand to pay for their siblings' cancer treatment, or in the case of Uvalde, parents willing to go inside of the school when police officers are waiting
Uvalde's
outside.
a great example. Yeah, the parents wanted to rush the shooter. The police officers were like, no, let's wait for backup, even though that's contrary to all the training they've received. The training is to rush the shooter immediately. School shootings are not hostage situations. The person is just going to keep killing until he's stopped, and you're supposed to, put your body in front of the bullets if that's all you can do if you're a police officer. That's what they're trained to do.
I genuinely wish it was an issue where the Department of Defense could just say, we're creating a new division, we're allocating funds to keep, the powerful leaders of our country safe. It's not that easy, because I think a huge reason why we have so many security failures, Uvalde being a great example of this, the Secret Service at the Butler, PA rally being another great example of this, and it's that people will protect communities they care about. They're more willing to lay their life on the line if it's their loved ones at stake. And I think, degrading community values, which is something that's happened over time in the United States, is really a huge part of this. Not seeing the people at the rally, not seeing Donald Trump as people that they care about enough to be proactive. The police officers responding to Uvalde, many of whom don't have their hometown in Uvalde. So are they going to go and risk their lives for kids whose parents they don't know, children they don't know? It's a lot to ask of someone to do that for people they don't care about. And I think, if we had police officers that were really serving the communities they lived in, we would see them do a better job.
Yeah. We got to see some kind of changes here for sure. So we'll be paying attention to any updates on the situation with that person that they arrested, and about the NewsNation incident for sure. More Rising right after this.
This is probably my favorite political moment of the week. It's going viral. Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, made a very awkward stop at a Georgia donut shop this week, and the internet is cackling over it. Take a look.
Okay.
We're going to do 2 dozen.
Okay.
Yep. And just a random assortment of stuff here. Just everything. Yeah, I mean, a lot of glazed here, some sprinkle stuff, some of these cinnamon rolls, just whatever makes sense.
Twitter is, of course, eating this up. One user wrote, J.D. Vance is the type of guy who goes into a donut shop in Georgia and orders a plain bagel. And, quote, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance seemingly thought he would get a nice on-camera moment Thursday when he visited a donut shop in Georgia, but the entire thing was incredibly awkward and #weird. So what gets me about this is someone who's like, I'm a working class hero, I love workers, this is how I grew up. But then you put him in a room with them and he acts like they don't speak English. It's like so foreign to him. He's like, so, you guys work here? Like how I practice French with Duolingo, the most basic sentences he can think of. It was just very painful to watch.
Yeah, I think you overhyped it a little bit. It was a little stiff and awkward.
Oh,
I mean,
so good, Robbie. The more you watch it, the better
I'm not
it gets.
ever gonna watch it again. I don't actually like that awkward. It's hard for me to watch awkwardness. It was slightly awkward. Yeah, they just seemed like they didn't really want to talk. I mean, I relate to the employees in the donut shop in not wanting to make small talk with other people generally, but yeah, what the kind of bagel he ordered, was that the mocking part?
It was more of a joke.
It was glazed.
He didn't really order any. He was just kind of like, whatever.
Put me
makes
whatever
sense.
bagels
And then
he left it
maybe
into them.
One of those. He couldn't even order right. I don't think it's that the workers.
What's the correct bagel order or donut
order?
Donut
I mean,
order.
if you're
so we're ordering bagels. I don't like bagels that much. I do want just plain bagels, plain.
We know you love plain. Not an option in a donut shop, though.
Yeah.
He's getting 2 dozen because he's getting them for the people on the plane and the press that's rolling around with them. Just say an assortment of your favorites. And he just couldn't even come up with normal human language. It was like an alien in a skin suit. Like, whatever the humans enjoy to eat, whatever the human appetite prefers. It was just very...
For donuts, it's all good. We want glaze, we want some chocolate, a little bit of
Boston
cream in there.
My dad calls those Yankees cream because he hates the Red Sox.
we want
cinnamon roll donuts.
Yeah, those are good. We want I went to Catholic school as a kid.
That's
and
telling.
12 years at Catholic school, and I don't know if this is a Catholic thing or it's a Polish thing. I think there was for Fat Tuesday, before the Lent season starts, you're supposed to order and you're supposed to gorge yourself on these donut-like things called punchkis. And there's 2 kinds. One has custard in them, and then one has this raspberry filling. And I loved those as a kid. Raspberry filled donut, but they're not exactly donut shaped. I feel like they're vaguely donut shaped, but they're not donuts. We call them punchkis. And I think it's a Polish thing. I can't spell them. There's like a Z and a K in there. Anyway,
every
I like
culture
those.
has a good fried pastry dough treat.
Yeah.
They're different wherever you go, and they're almost everywhere.
Yeah.
But J.D. Vance should be familiar with ordering donuts. If he doesn't like donuts, why did he bring the press into the donut shop? It's like he should know what he wants to order. But maybe he's not eating them. Maybe he's watching his figure. Take them into a smoothie shop. That's fine.
Like us.
But it seemed like he wants to go and like have this folksy moment on camera.
Love a good smoothie store. That's the place to be.
Like, this is a time when he's supposed to be making conversation with people. I don't think it's that the workers didn't want to talk. I think he did a bad job making conversation.
Yeah,
so how long have you worked there? Okay. No follow-up question? Do you like it? Do you like donuts?
I don't disagree. Again, this is the inequality we have because I'm not particularly a fan of J.D. Vance, particularly in terms of his policies. I'm not convinced that he's like a particularly gifted retail politician in the way that we saw there. So yeah, I'm not going to correct or anything you said or argue against it. Really, I don't think it.
Well, you
matters
can join
that
in
much,
on
but
me.
I can join in.
Me. Yeah, you can hate on JD Vance with me. It'll be really fun.
You're saying that in a very demure and mindful way, right? Did I do it right?
Yeah, that was great.
All right.
This was not very demure or mindful
There we
of
go.
JD Vance.
There we go.
I think, if he's going to keep running, he's got to learn.
He is going to keep running.
I know. He's got to learn how to interact with people. And I think this could be a fun story where he learns how to do that and he's trained up on how to be a social guy. But that's the thing. I think people want someone that they can have a beer with, like what everyone says. And when JD Vance was asked about that, he was like, well, because I like beer is why they should have a beer with me. And I just don't know what's up with this guy because he was seemingly very social in Yale Law School. There's all these photos of him partying. And so I don't know if it's that he's scared he's going to be scrutinized for everything he does. That's reasonable, right? He's running for public office. I don't know what it is, but it's very unnatural to watch.
But he drinks. Donald Trump famously does not drink. Tim Walz doesn't drink anymore. Does Kamala drink? Could you have a beer with Kamala? I think she drinks, right? Does she?
It doesn't matter if she drinks or not. I think
Well, it
that
matters to me.
question's about if it's enjoyable to be in a setting with her.
Yeah.
She likes to smoke weed and listen to Tupac. Remember
That's
that
true.
interview?
That's true. Yeah, that's her thing. Do they not pre-screen these donut shops? I always assumed that
they asked permission to go in with a ton of cameras, right?
it seemed like they had not asked. Yeah, it seemed like they'd not done it right because the staff didn't really want to be on camera and resented the interruption. Is how it seemed.
Well, he must have known that because they asked permission. But imagine being a worker in that scenario and you're like, I don't want to be seen as supporting
I'm just supposed to find a donut shop where the owner loves the candidate and then they're so excited. Yeah,
but if your boss is like,
he was
can you
set
do
up
this?
for failure.
If your boss is like, hey, we're going to get some press and advertisement from this, like I need you to do this, and you're on the clock, what are you going to do? Be like, no, I quit? Like, I didn't know this was a part of the job?
Oh, you're thinking about the workers.
The workers, yeah, because they're in a weird position. What, he's worked there for many years. Is he going to be like, no, this is it for me? And they're like, come on.
Well, I mean,
great
part of the
advertising.
job of the workers is to be courteous to the customers, regardless of if it's JD Vance or
I think it's a lot to expect someone who works selling donuts to be on TV.
Well, of course, yeah. They have the
Yeah.
right not to be on TV, yeah.
Right. But I don't know, they might have felt pressured that their boss would be mad at them if they were like, I don't want to do that. And their boss didn't want to be on camera. So I don't know. It's a very weird thing to force that upon the workers. I remember
It was not a successful stunt. That's true.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a stunt, not a successful
That's
one.
the way the donut crumbles.
He lost
sometimes.
the donut vote with this.
Lost
I'm a
the donut
donut enthusiast. Not that he ever could have had it anyway, but.
All right, that does it for us for this week on Rising. We made it through Democratic National Convention Week and Republican National Convention Week. So now we're just getting into prime election season. We'll have some debates coming up. We'll have a lot more analysis of not just the vibes, but the policies of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and Donald Trump and JD Vance.
Maybe we'll get to see JD Vance go to Home Depot. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we're available wherever you get your podcasts.
See you next week.
Bye, y'all.